My name is Peter. And I never thought Jesus would show up at my door, not in this life, not in this world, not in the condition I was in. I remember that night with a clarity that still wakes me sometimes. The sky outside looked bruised, dark purple clouds pressed low, swollen with rain. Thunder rolled like distant grief. The house creaked in that way old houses do, like it was sighing with me. Inside, the lights were dim, casting long shadows across my living room. I had left the lamp on out of habit, not comfort. My home wasn't warm anymore. It was a shelter I returned to because I had nowhere else to crumble. And that night, I was crumbling. My job felt uncertain. My family felt distant. My prayers felt like messages tossed into an ocean with no shore. I sat at my kitchen table, staring at a cold cup of coffee. Not drinking it. Not dumping it. Just staring. Like somehow it reflected my life, neglected, cold, waiting for something that wasn't coming. My hands trembled a little as I rubbed my forehead. I hadn't slept properly in weeks. I'd been carrying exhaustion like a secret, hoping no one noticed. That's when it happened. Knock. I ignored it. Another knock. Soft. Almost polite. I frowned. It was nearly 11 p.m. Who knocks at that hour? I got up slowly, almost dragging my feet across the wooden floor. But before I reached the door, a third knock. Steady. Patient. Like someone who wasn't going to leave until I responded. My heart thudded strangely. And for the first time in a long time, I whispered, "Lord, is this a sign? Or am I finally losing it?" My hand hovered over the doorknob. I opened the door a few inches. And the world I knew, the tired, lonely, silent world, shifted. There stood a man. Not glowing. Not shining. Not radiating any heavenly light. Just a man. Simple clothes. Slightly dusty shoes. Calm posture. And eyes. Eyes that looked like they carried centuries of compassion. He smiled gently. "Peter." My breath caught. Because he didn't ask my name. He said it like he'd known me long before he ever stood on my porch. I whispered the only name that made sense. "Jesus?" He nodded. The wind rustled behind him, but he didn't seem to notice. He just stood there, waiting. Not forcing. Not demanding. "May I come in?" he asked. And in that moment, my world, my wounds, my doubts, all collided with a truth I wasn't ready for. Jesus was standing at my door. I opened the door wider, not because I was ready, but because something inside me broke open. "Come in," I whispered. He stepped across the threshold quietly, almost reverently, like he respected the space more than I ever had. I closed the door behind him. The latch clicked softly, echoing in my chest. He took a slow look around, not inspecting, not criticizing, just observing, like someone taking in the story of a place. My house wasn't messy, but it also wasn't cared for. Stacks of unopened mail sat on the table. A jacket lay draped over a chair. A Bible gathered dust on a shelf near the window. He noticed the Bible. Not with judgment, but with the sadness of someone who missed talking to an old friend. He walked to the living room and sat in the armchair I always used when I worried late at night. A soft smile touched his face. "This is where you think the most," he said. My throat tightened. How do you know that?" He didn't answer directly. He just patted the seat across from him. "Sit with me, Peter." I obeyed, though part of me felt exposed, like all the thoughts I tried to hide were suddenly on display. For a moment neither of us spoke. The rain outside began to fall, gentle at first, then heavier. The sound filled the room like a background melody. Finally he spoke. "Why have you let your heart grow so tired?" His voice wasn't accusing. It was soft, like a parent asking a hurting child why they didn't ask for help sooner. I swallowed hard. I didn't know how to stop it." He nodded slowly. "You prayed," he said. "But you didn't rest. A tear slipped down my face before I could stop it. I didn't think you heard me. Jesus leaned back, resting his hands on his knees. I heard every word, Peter. Even the ones you couldn't say. That undid me. Because how do you respond to someone who knew your silence better than your speech? I whispered. Then why didn't you answer? His expression didn't harden. It softened. I did. Just not in the ways you expected. I shook my head. Lord, it felt like you were gone. He leaned forward, eyes locked on mine. Peter, I never left you. You left yourself. My breath hitched. That sentence pierced deeper than anything I'd heard. Jesus continued. You lived surrounded by noise, but you stopped listening to your own soul. You filled your days with tasks, but not with me. You prayed for help, but you didn't allow your heart to be held. I covered my face with my hands, overwhelmed. Then he said the words that set the entire journey into motion. That is why I came tonight. Because you wouldn't come to me. So I came to you. The house felt different then. Not brighter. Not louder. Just safer. And for the first time in a long time, I let out a shaky breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. Jesus sat quietly in the armchair across from me, his posture relaxed, his expression steady, calm in a way that made my own restless spirit painfully obvious. The rain tapped harder against the window now, like thousands of tiny fingers trying to get my attention. The room felt small, not because of him, but because of everything inside me he was uncovering. He looked at me gently. Peter, tell me what's truly weighing on you. I forced out a breath. Part of me wanted to speak. The other part wanted to hide everything. I whispered. I don't think you'll like what I have to say. He smiled softly. If I only loved you when you were composed, I wouldn't be here tonight. That disarmed me. It knocked loose something I'd kept locked away for too long. I stared at my hands, hands that shook, hands that had worked, hands that had failed. Finally I spoke. I'm tired, Lord. He nodded. I know. No, I mean, really tired, I continued. Tired in my bones. Tired in my soul. Every day feels heavier than the last. And I keep asking you for strength, but... My voice wavered. But sometimes I feel like you ignore me. Jesus didn't flinch. He didn't argue. He didn't rush me. What makes you feel ignored? He asked softly. I exhaled shakily. Because nothing changes. I pray, and the problems stay. I ask for peace, and I get anxiety. I ask for direction, and I feel lost. My voice cracked. I'm not strong enough. And I keep waiting for you to fix me, but nothing happens. For the first time since he'd entered my home, he leaned closer, slowly, intentionally. Peter, you think my silence is abandonment. But my silence has always been an invitation. I looked up, confused and hurt. An invitation to what? To trust me more deeply than you trust your understanding. I felt something twist inside me. That's easy for you to say, I whispered, instantly regretting the disrespect in my tone. But Jesus didn't react with offense or disappointment. His voice remained gentle. Peter, faith is not built by seeing. Faith is built in the places where sight fails you. He let that linger in the air. But the storm inside me was far from calm. I stood up abruptly, pacing the room. This is exactly what I mean. You speak in ways I don't understand. You say you're there, but I feel nothing. You say you guide me, but I can't see where I'm going. You say you love me, but why doesn't it feel like love? My breathing grew uneven. I feel alone, Jesus. I feel like I've been carrying everything by myself. And I resent you for that. Silence. Not the aching silence I'd known before, but a stillness that made my words echo louder. Jesus looked at me with an expression I didn't expect. Not hurt. Not anger. But sorrow. Real sorrow. He stood up and approached me slowly, giving me every chance to pull away. When he was close enough, he spoke quietly. Peter, You resent me because you misunderstand me. Those words landed heavier than anything else. He continued, You pray for me to take away your burdens, but you refuse to put them in my hands. My jaw tightened. That's not fair. He nodded. It isn't. But neither is the pain you've been carrying alone. His honesty cut straight through me. I turned away, unable to meet his eyes. I don't know how to give you everything, I admitted. He stepped beside me, not in front of me, not above me, beside me. That is why I am here tonight, he whispered. To show you how. A lump formed in my throat so tight it felt almost painful. I whispered back. It just hurts. More than I can explain. He nodded. Pain that is hidden becomes prison. Pain that is spoken becomes freedom. My eyes burned again. I felt childish, foolish, exposed. Jesus touched my shoulder, just a light, grounding touch. Tell me where it hurts, Peter. The room felt so quiet it was like the world outside had stopped breathing. My voice trembled. It hurts everywhere. He nodded once, slow and understanding. Then start with the place that hurts the most. I knew exactly which place that was. I just didn't want to face it. He waited. Not impatiently, just faithfully. And eventually, the truth clawed its way out of me. It's not just life that exhausted me, I said. It's me. I'm tired of myself. Jesus turned slightly toward me. Tired of what part of yourself? All of it. I wanted to say all of it. But instead I spoke piece by piece. I'm tired of pretending I'm okay. Tired of disappointing people. Tired of making decisions that lead nowhere. Tired of feeling like a burden. Tired of feeling. My voice cracked suddenly. Tired of feeling unlovable. The last word hung between us like a confession I'd kept buried for years. Jesus closed his eyes briefly, and when he opened them, they were full of something fierce and gentle all at once. Peter, when did you decide you were unlovable? I looked away, guilt flooding every corner of my heart. When I kept messing up. When I kept failing. When no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't be the person I was supposed to be. My chest tightened painfully. So I figured, maybe you were disappointed too. Jesus stepped in front of me then, carefully, reverently, and placed his hand over my heart. Peter, listen to me. His voice was steady, warm, unshakably sincere. You cannot disappoint someone who knows every one of your weaknesses and still chooses you. His words hit me with so much force that I took a step back. But he held my gaze. You think your failures surprise me? You think your flaws repel me? You think your brokenness makes you unworthy of my love? His voice softened to a whisper. Peter, your brokenness is the very reason I came. My knees weakened. I had spent years believing God tolerated me, never truly embracing the idea that he delighted in me. And now, the truth was standing right in front of me. Human. Present. Patient. Jesus continued. You measure yourself by your failures. But I measure you by my love. Tears blurred my vision again. The conflict inside me, the anger, the shame, the confusion, the desperation, began swirling even faster, like a storm about to break open. I whispered, almost breathlessly. Then why does everything still hurt? He replied. Because you have not yet let me heal you. I stared at him. He stared back. And suddenly, I realized something terrifying. He wasn't asking for a confession. He was asking for surrender. The kind of surrender that changes everything. Jesus stood in front of me, close enough that I could feel the warmth of his presence, yet gentle enough that I never felt cornered. Outside the rain softened, but inside, the storm in my chest grew louder. I wiped my eyes with the back of my hand, embarrassed by how many tears I'd shed in front of him. He didn't look away. Not once. He waited. Not for the right words, but for the honest ones. I swallowed hard. My voice wavered. Lord, I don't know how to surrender. I don't know how to let go. I don't know how to stop fighting myself. Jesus stepped closer, his expression both tender and unshakably steady. "You don't need to know how, Peter," he said softly. "You only need to be willing." I blinked, stunned by the simplicity of it. "Willing?" I whispered. He nodded. "Willing to stop pretending you're unbreakable. Willing to be honest with me. Willing to let me carry what you were never meant to hold." His voice lowered, rich with compassion. "Willing to stop being your own savior." That shook me. I had never thought of myself that way. But that's exactly what I'd been trying to do. Fix myself. Heal myself. Strengthen myself. Redeem myself. "Peter," he said gently, "you keep asking me to save you, while holding on to the very chains I came to break." I felt something inside me crack. A deep, long-awaited fracture. "I'm afraid," I admitted. It came out barely above a whisper. "Of what?" he asked. "Of what happens if I stop being strong." Jesus nodded, as if he expected that answer. "If you stop being strong," he said quietly, "then you will finally learn what it means for me to be strong for you." My breath caught. I lowered my gaze. "I don't want to disappoint you." Jesus gently lifted my chin with 2 fingers, guiding my eyes back to his. "You could never disappoint me by being honest." My chest tightened painfully. I felt like I was standing at the edge of something irreversible. A cliff where the only way forward was to leap. And he knew. Jesus stepped closer, so close I could see the faint lines around his eyes. The kind of lines carved not by age, but by compassion. "Peter," he whispered, "show me the wound." I froze. Because I knew exactly what he meant. Not the surface hurts. Not the small insecurities. Not the everyday stress. He was asking for the deepest one. The one I never touched. The one I buried so far inside I hoped it would suffocate. My breathing hitched. I don't think I can." He shook his head gently. "Yes, you can. But only when you're ready. And I am here until you are." The rain outside faded into a quiet drizzle. The room felt impossibly still. I sank into the couch, my hands trembling. "My whole life," I began slowly, "I've felt like I have to earn love." Jesus sat beside me. Not across the room. Not towering over me. But right next to me. Close. Present. Human. "Go on," he encouraged softly. I stared at my hands. If I wasn't successful enough, I felt worthless. If I wasn't helpful enough, I felt invisible. If I wasn't perfect enough, I felt unlovable. A shaky breath escaped me. And I kept thinking, maybe you see me the same way. Jesus closed his eyes for a second, as if absorbing the weight of my words. Then he spoke. And his voice carried both tenderness and fierce truth. "Peter, if my love could be earned, it would not be love. It would be payment." I looked at him, startled. "But I keep failing," I whispered. "And I keep choosing you," he replied. Those 5 words shattered me. My chest collapsed into quiet sobs. The kind that come from somewhere deep. Somewhere aching. I pressed my palms to my face. "I'm so tired of being broken," I cried. Jesus placed his arm around my shoulders, pulling me into an embrace. Not dramatic. Not overwhelming. Just steady. "Then let me hold what's been breaking you," he murmured. I leaned into him without meaning to. Like a weary child who had spent too long pretending they didn't need comfort. The moment I allowed myself to rest against him, something inside me cracked open fully. Memories I'd buried, failures I hid, pain I never named, all surfaced. I breathed them out in trembling gasps. And he held me. No rush. No discomfort. No disappointment. Just presence. When the tears finally slowed, he spoke again. "Peter, surrender is not giving up. Surrender is giving over." I pulled back slightly, wiping my face. "To you?" I whispered. "To me," he confirmed. How? I asked, genuinely lost. Jesus touched his chest with his palm. By letting me into the places you kept closed. My voice broke again. I'm scared. I know. What if it hurts? It will, he admitted gently. But healing always hurts before it helps. The honesty in his tone, the lack of sugarcoating, the deep compassion, made me trust him more. The storm inside me eased just a little. He placed his hand over mine. Peter, this is the moment you choose. Carry your pain alone. Or place it in my hands. I stared at him. Into those steady, knowing eyes. And for the first time in my life, I understood what surrender really meant. Not weakness. Not failure. Not giving up. But letting go of what was killing me. I took a shaking breath. Lord, I don't know how to give you everything. He squeezed my hand gently. Then start by giving me one thing. I nodded slowly. My lips quivered as I whispered. Take my fear. Jesus smiled. A soft, proud smile. Like a father watching his child take their first unsteady step. I already have it, he said. Now let me take the rest. And in that moment, with tears drying on my face, with my chest aching yet strangely lighter, with Jesus sitting beside me in my small, imperfect living room, I felt something shift inside me. A breaking. A release. A holy collapse. The turning point. The moment everything changed. I didn't waste another second. I walked straight to my front door and pulled it open, almost expecting, almost hoping, that Jesus would be standing there again. But the space was empty. Just the same quiet street, the quiet night, the quiet world I had ignored for too long. Yet somehow, I didn't feel alone. Not anymore. I stepped outside. The air was cool, carrying the gentle smell of earth after a long day. I closed my eyes and breathed it in. And for the first time in years, maybe even decades, I felt alive. Not the frantic kind of alive that comes from running from problems, but the steady, grounded, peaceful kind, the kind that settles in your bones. As if something inside me had finally come home. And as I stood there, barefoot on my front steps, I felt it, the truth Jesus had whispered beneath all his words. I wasn't abandoned. I wasn't forgotten. I wasn't too late. I was still loved. Still held. Still worth knocking for. And that changed everything. I went back inside, grabbed my coat, and headed out. Not to escape, but to finally show up for my life. I walked to my sister's house first. The same house I had avoided ever since our last argument, back when pride was more important to me than peace. My hands shook as I knocked. When she opened the door, her eyes widened. Not in anger. Not in shock. But in something that looked a lot like relief. Peter? She whispered. Yeah, I said. It's me. I'm sorry. For everything. Her lips trembled. And then she stepped forward and pulled me into a hug so tight I thought my ribs might crack. For a moment, we both just stood there, crying, shaking, healing. I remember thinking, look at that. A door opens, and a life changes. Just like mine did. Just like yours might, too. Over the next few hours, I visited people I had hurt. People I had lost. People I thought I'd never face again. Not everyone forgave me. Not everyone welcomed me back. But that wasn't the point. I wasn't knocking to erase my past. I was knocking to rewrite my future. And as the sun rose, soft and gold across the sky, I felt something settle inside me. A certainty. A quiet conviction. Jesus was right. The door to my life wasn't just opened, it was no longer mine to close. Because once love gets in, real, holy, stubborn love, it doesn't leave. It transforms. It's been months since the day Jesus knocked at my door. Sometimes I still wonder if someone will believe what I'm about to say. Someone might think it's impossible, too strange, too miraculous. But then I remind myself, The miracle wasn't that Jesus came to my door. The miracle was that I answered. I started waking up earlier. Started praying again, not with fear, not with guilt, but with honesty. Some mornings, I sit at my kitchen table with a cup of coffee, staring at the empty chair across from me. And I smile. Because even though I can't see him, I know he's still sitting there. Still knocking. Still guiding. Still waiting for me to keep choosing the open door. And every now and then, when life gets heavy, I find myself whispering, Lord, if you ever want to come by again, I'll be here. But the truth is, he never left. Not really. Because the moment he stepped into my home that night, he stepped into my heart. And now the door stays open. For him. For grace. For new beginnings. And maybe, just maybe, for someone who needs me to knock on their door, too.
My name is Christina, and there was a time I stopped believing in miracles. Not intentionally. Not angrily. Just quietly, the way a candle doesn't go out with a bang but with a slow, steady fade until you suddenly notice the room is dark. Miracles used to feel like stories for other people. I'd hear them at church, the testimonies that made the whole congregation gasp. The auntie whose cancer vanished. The brother who found a job the very next day after praying. The couple who had a baby after 10 years of waiting. I clapped. I smiled. I said praise God. But deep down, I always wondered. Why not me? Why don't things like that ever happen to me? I believed in God, yes. But miracles? Those felt like rare treasures reserved for the chosen, the holy, the favored. Not someone like me, tired, flawed, often afraid, sometimes doubting. But everything changed one seemingly ordinary day, a day that began like every other, with a heart already drained before the morning even started. I didn't know it then, but that day would mark the first thread of a miracle that would later overhaul my entire life. Not one miracle. Not even two. But a chain of them, woven through pain, waiting, confusion, and surrender. This is the full story. My story. A testimony of real-life miracles, the kind that don't always arrive the way you expect, but always arrive exactly when you need them. If you are listening today and you're tired. If you're praying but hearing only silence. If you're holding on by a thread. Then this story is meant for you. Because I've learned something that I want you to know. Miracles don't start when the situation changes. Miracles start when you refuse to give up. Before anything good happened, everything fell apart. I was sitting at my kitchen table, clutching a cup of coffee that had long turned cold. The bills were scattered like fallen leaves across the table, each one shouting the same accusation. You can't keep up. My job was unstable. My mother was sick. My heart was exhausted. I remember staring at the wall, not really seeing anything, and whispering, Lord, I don't know how much longer I can do this. The silence that followed felt heavier than the bills, heavier than the diagnosis, heavier than all the fear I had tried to bury. And then, as if time to break me even more, my phone buzzed with a message from my mother's doctor. Your mother is not responding to the new medication. We may need to discuss alternative plans. Alternative plans. Those two words hit harder than the diagnosis itself. I felt something inside me collapse, like a pillar that had been holding everything up just snapped. I grabbed my keys and rushed to the hospital, rehearsing the worst-case scenarios in my head. When I entered her room, she looked so small, a fragile figure wrapped in blankets, breathing unevenly. Ma, I whispered, sitting beside her. How are you feeling? She opened her eyes slowly. Tired, but still here. I forced a smile, but something inside me cracked. Later that night, when she slept, I walked to the small chapel inside the hospital. It was empty, dimly lit, and freezing cold. I sat in the last pew and whispered a prayer that wasn't eloquent or strong, it was just raw. God, please. I can lose everything else, but not her. Don't let her slip away. I waited for a sign, a whisper, a warmth, anything. But all I got was silence. That was the night I realized something. Sometimes miracles begin in the quiet, in the moments when you think God isn't listening at all. A week later, as if life wanted to test the very limit of my endurance, I received an email from my company. The subject line was enough to break me. Department restructuring notice. I opened it with shaking hands. We regret to inform you that your position has been affected by the restructuring. I stopped reading. It felt like the room shrank and the air thinned. Like the universe had pressed fast forward on all my fears at once. I lost my job. My mother was sick. My savings were disappearing. And deep inside, a darker fear whispered. God has abandoned you. The conflict wasn't just the situation, it was the battle inside me. Faith versus fear. Hope versus despair. Trust versus confusion. I felt like a rope being pulled apart. One night, overwhelmed and numb, I took a long drive with no destination in mind. Somehow, instinctively, I stopped at the old chapel I used to visit as a teenager. It was closed. Dark. Silent. I pressed my forehead against the steering wheel and sobbed, not quiet tears, but the kind that come from the part of you you try to keep hidden. I whispered through the sobs. God, please, do you even see me anymore? No answer. Just my own heartbeat echoing in the silence. I drove home feeling emptier than ever before. The next morning, I sat by my window holding my mother's rosary, the same one she prayed with every night. I turned it over in my hands, not sure if I was praying or just holding something familiar so I wouldn't fall apart. I whispered again. Lord, why is this happening to us? Still silence. But the truth is, God often works even when he seems quiet, and the silence itself is not the end of the story. It was the beginning of mine. One afternoon, my mother called me from her hospital room, her voice unusually energized, almost excited. Chris, she said, I need to tell you something, but promise you won't think I'm crazy. I felt a pinch of worry. What is it, Ma? She exhaled shakily. Last night, when I prayed, I felt something warm, like someone was placing a blanket over me. And suddenly I could breathe easier. My body froze. I called the nurse, she continued, and she checked everything. She said my oxygen levels had suddenly improved. I whispered, Ma, are you sure? Yes, she said. And that's not all. She paused, voice cracking with emotion. I prayed for you. I asked God to send you a miracle too, not just for my healing, but for your life. My throat tightened. She continued, I told God, don't let my daughter drown while saving me. Give her something she cannot deny, something unmistakably from you. I cried silently. And then, as if the universe overheard her prayer, things began happening. Small things at first. A friend sent money without knowing my situation. Someone from church offered free meals for my mother. A stranger at the hospital said, God sees your heart, Anik. Don't lose hope. A neighbor offered me part-time work. A former colleague connected me with a community foundation. None of these were fireworks. None were dramatic. But they were seeds. Signs. Whispers. Steps forward. And the strangest thing happened. I began to feel lighter. Not because the circumstances changed, but because I felt seen again. For the first time in months, I prayed without feeling like my words were hitting the ceiling. I said, Lord, if you have more for me, I'm ready. I didn't know just how much more he had planned. 3 months after losing my job, something unexpected happened. One morning, I received a message from the director of the community foundation I had helped during a volunteer event. Christina, can we meet this week? We want to discuss an opportunity with you. My heart raced. When I arrived, the director smiled warmly and said, You probably don't know this, but the young women you coached during our workshop have been asking for you. They said you helped them believe in themselves. My eyes stung. He continued. We need someone with your heart. Someone who can guide, encourage, and inspire. We'd like to offer you a full-time position. I stared at him, speechless. A job. A purpose. A fresh start. But, why me? I asked. His answer felt holy. Because people trust you. And because you've lived through battles that give you depth. You speak hope in a way that feels real. It took everything in me not to break down in tears. The job offered more than my previous salary. More stability. More fulfillment. But the miracle didn't end there. When I told my mother the news, she cried softly and whispered, Chris, that's the miracle I prayed for. And then she said the words that completed the circle. I told God, if you're going to heal me, heal my daughter's life too. Her voice shook. He answered both. By the time my mother was discharged, stronger than she'd been in years, I had a new job, new purpose, and a new understanding of what miracles truly look like. They are not always sudden. Not always dramatic. Not always loud. Sometimes they unfold slowly. Quietly. Through people. Through moments. Through closed doors that lead to better ones. But they come. They always come. Working at the foundation changed everything. I met countless people walking the same roads I once walked, fear, loss, confusion, exhaustion. And every time I told them my story, every time, something in their eyes changed. Like a spark relit. Like a weight lifted. I realized that my miracle wasn't only for me. It was meant to ripple outward. To touch others. To remind people who were drowning that God still knows how to part waters. Since then, I've witnessed miracles in others. A woman healed after doctors said there was no hope. A young man freed from addiction after one prayer. A mother reunited with her daughter after 10 silent years. A family receiving unexpected provision the night their pantry ran empty. A student getting a scholarship she never applied for, accidentally selected, they said. Every story reminded me. God is still in the business of rewriting impossible endings. And as I stand today, healed, restored, strengthened, I carry this truth in my heart. If God did it for me. If God did it for them. He can do it for you. Your miracle may not come the way you expect. It may not come at the time you want. It may not come wrapped in fireworks or loud announcements. But it will come. Because hope is never wasted. Because God never sleeps. Because tears are never ignored. Because faith, even trembling faith, moves mountains. If Christina's story touched your heart today. If it reminded you that miracles still happen. If it breathed even a small spark of hope back into your spirit. Like this video. Share it with someone who needs a miracle today. Subscribe to the channel for more real-life stories of healing, faith, and hope. Let this be part of someone else's miracle. Because your share, your comment, your voice might be the message someone is praying for right now. Miracles are real. They still happen. And one is on its way to you.
I used to think I understood how God worked. That if I prayed earnestly, if I followed Him faithfully, if I lived the right way, then I would somehow be shielded from the worst storms of life. But that illusion shattered the morning I lost my job. I still hear my boss's voice echoing in my head. A flat, emotionless tone. Like he'd practiced the words until they didn't feel human anymore. Daniel, we have to let you go. Effective today. I remember staring at him, waiting for something. An explanation, a reason, a lifeline. Nothing. Just a cold handshake. A cardboard box. And an escort to the elevator like I was a risk the moment I stopped being useful. As I stepped outside, the sun was too bright, almost mocking. Life went on around me. Cars honking, people rushing to work. And there I was, a man suddenly unanchored. On the ride home, I whispered prayers under my breath. God, I don't understand, but you're here, right? Please, just guide me. I expected peace, or an answer, or at least a sign, but heaven stayed silent. I wish I could tell you I handled it gracefully. I wish I could say I trusted God from the very beginning. But the truth? Panicked. I paced the apartment. I reread the termination letter like it might magically change. And at night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling until the shadows seemed to move. A few days later, I met my friend Lucas. He took one look at me and frowned. "Bro, did you even sleep?" I forced a laugh. "Does it look that bad?" He sipped his coffee, watching me. "What happened?" I hesitated. Then the words tumbled out. "The company downsized. I was part of the cut." Lucas leaned back in his chair, sighing. "Man, I'm so sorry. What are you gonna do now?" "I'm praying," I said softly. "I'm waiting on God." Lucas nodded slowly, his expression heavy. "Just don't wait so long that you stop living, okay?" I didn't answer, because I already felt like I was slowly drowning. And that was how my valley began. The kind that pulls you in so deep you can't see the way out. The kind that makes you question your worth, your future, your faith. The kind where even God feels like a stranger. I had no idea how dark that valley would get, or how close God actually was, closer than he'd ever been, when I thought he was completely silent. But first, I had to break, and I did, hard. If losing my job was the first cut, what followed were the 1,000 small wounds that drained me slowly. The first one hit harder than I expected. I was at the grocery store, calculating every item in my basket like they were pieces of gold. When I reached the counter, the cashier scanned the items, and the number flashed on the screen, higher than what I had. I forced a smile, trying not to look embarrassed. Sorry, can you remove the eggs? And the chicken." People behind me sighed softly. A few shifted impatiently. I felt the heat crawl up my neck. The cashier gave me a sympathetic smile, but that almost made it worse. As I walked out with less food than I needed, I whispered under my breath, "God, do you see this?" Silence. A few days later, I checked my email and saw a message. "We regret to inform you." Another rejection. A long list of employers telling me I wasn't enough. It stung, chipped at my confidence. And every time I saw those words, a small part of me wondered if God agreed. I slammed my laptop shut harder than I meant to. "Seriously, God? I'm trying. I'm doing everything I can. Why is nothing moving?" My voice echoed in the empty room. The room didn't answer. Neither did heaven. One afternoon, I decided to walk to clear my mind. I ended up at the park near my apartment where kids laughed, parents chased toddlers, and everyone seemed to have a life that made sense. I sat on a bench, staring at the ground, when a group of birds landed near my feet. They chirped happily, pecking at crumbs someone had left behind. I remembered the verse, "Look at the birds of the air. Your heavenly Father feeds them." And instead of comfort, I felt anger rise in my chest. I muttered, "Well, maybe I'm not a bird." A man a few feet away turned and gave me a strange look, but I didn't care, because for the first time I felt something I never admitted out loud. I felt invisible, forgotten, overlooked. That night, something inside me snapped. It was past midnight. The apartment was dark except for the faint glow from the streetlights leaking through the curtains. I knelt beside my bed, more out of exhaustion than devotion, and whispered, "God, what do you want from me? I'm praying every day. I'm trying. I'm waiting. Why are you silent? Why does it feel like you're punishing me?" My voice trembled. I need you. Please say something. Anything." My chest tightened. My throat burned. My eyes stung. But again, silence. I started noticing small things going wrong. I overslept for an interview. I missed important deadlines. I forgot to reply to messages. And the worst part? The more things fell apart, the more people started giving advice I didn't ask for. Lucas called one evening. "Bro, you okay? Haven't heard from you." I sighed. "Just tired." "Look, man, maybe you should consider switching careers? Or freelancing. Or..." I cut him off. "I'm doing what I can." He paused. Are you mad? No. I'm just tired of feeling like I'm not doing enough. He was quiet before saying gently, Daniel, maybe God already spoke and you just didn't like the answer. His words hit like a punch. After we hung up, I sat in silence, replaying what he said. What if he was right? What if God had spoken? What if his answer was no? What if God wasn't silent? What if he simply wasn't choosing me? That night was the darkest. Everything felt heavy and suffocating, like the air itself was pressing against me. I turned off all the lights and sat on the floor, leaning against my bed. My breathing was shaky. My hands were cold. My thoughts spiraled fast and uncontrollably. What if I never get back on my feet? What if I lose my apartment? What if God has moved on from me? I clenched my fists and whispered, God, I'm drowning. Why won't you pull me out? And then, only the hum of the air conditioner answered. I buried my face in my hands. For the first time in my life, I felt like giving up, not on God, but on myself. That was the deepest point of my valley. But little did I know, God was closer to breaking his silence than I ever imagined. The ground underneath me, the very place where I felt weakest, was exactly where something new was about to grow. But first, something unexpected had to happen. Something that would shift everything. The shift didn't happen with a miracle, or a job offer, or an angelic voice from heaven. It began with something small, something I almost ignored. It was a Thursday morning, cloudy, cold, the kind of day where the sky looks tired, like it hasn't slept either. I dragged myself outside for a walk, mostly because I couldn't stand staring at the same walls anymore. My mind felt numb, heavy, overcrowded with doubts. I wandered farther than usual and eventually stopped in front of a small chapel tucked between two old buildings. I had passed this street 100 times but never noticed it before. The door was open. Something about the warm yellow light inside felt inviting. I stepped in. The chapel was nearly empty. Just a few wooden pews, a small cross at the front, and soft piano music playing from somewhere unseen. At the far left pew sat an older man. Silver hair, simple clothes, hands clasped together like he'd been praying for a long time. I didn't want to intrude, so I sat a few rows behind him. For a moment, I closed my eyes and tried to pray. God, I'm here. Please, meet me halfway. But again, nothing. Just my own breathing, uneven and shaky. I sighed quietly, ready to leave, when I heard a gentle voice behind me. You look tired, son. I turned. The older man had moved without me noticing. He stood near my pew, his eyes kind but sharp, like he could see more than I was showing. Oh, sorry, I muttered. Didn't mean to be loud. He smiled. You weren't. I just recognized that look. What look? He sat beside me slowly. The look of someone waiting for God to speak, and terrified that he won't. His words hit deeper than I expected. Yeah, I admitted softly. Something like that. He studied me with calm eyes. Tell me what's weighing your heart. I hesitated, but something about him felt safe, like speaking to someone who had carried storms of his own. So, I told him everything. Losing my job, the rejections, the silence, the shame, the fear, and how it felt like God had pressed mute on me. When I finished, he nodded gently. Then he asked the question that cracked something open inside me. When was the last time you listened, without telling God what he must say? I frowned. What do you mean? He leaned back, hands resting on his knees. Sometimes we're so desperate for a specific answer, a job, a sign, a breakthrough, that the moment God whispers something different, we miss it. I swallowed hard. So you think God has spoken? He nodded. God always speaks. The question is whether we recognize his voice when the answer isn't what we expected. I stared at the floor. Then what is he saying to me now? He smiled faintly. That he hasn't left you. My throat tightened. He continued, do you know how seeds grow? I blinked. Under the soil? In the dark, he said. Hidden, covered, surrounded by silence. But that silence isn't death. It's preparation. I felt my chest stir, like a flicker of warmth in a long winter. The man went on, his voice low and steady. You feel buried, but God is planting you. A breath I didn't know I was holding escaped me. He looked toward the cross and added, God does his deepest work in silence. Ask any believer who has walked through a valley. They'll tell you the same. I stared at him, unable to hide the tremor in my voice. Then why does it hurt this much? He turned to me with gentle eyes. Because the soil is tightest right before the seed breaks open. Something inside me cracked, but instead of falling apart, it felt like something was finally breaking free. I whispered, Who are you? He chuckled softly. Just someone who's been in the dark before, and someone who learned that God's silence was his way of pulling me closer. He stood to leave, patting my shoulder. Keep praying, son. Not for an answer, but for ears to hear the whisper that's already on its way. I watched him walk out the chapel doors, and sitting there alone, for the first time in months, I didn't feel completely abandoned. Something shifted in me that day. Not because my problems disappeared, but because hope cracked open through the silence. And I had no idea at all, that God was about to make that whisper much louder. Very soon. Something changed after that day in the chapel. Not around me, but inside me. For the first time in months, I woke up without that crushing weight on my chest. I still didn't have a job. My bank account was still gasping for air. My problems hadn't magically disappeared, but I wasn't drowning anymore. It felt like someone slipped a hand under my chin and lifted my head just enough for me to breathe again. I started praying differently, not begging God to scream answers, but simply asking him to keep me steady. And slowly, my heart softened. My thoughts quieted. I didn't feel alone. Still frustrated sometimes, yes. Still anxious. Still searching. But not alone. A few days later, something strange happened. I woke up from a dream. I didn't remember the details. Just a sentence echoing in my head like a whisper carried across a long distance. Go where the light is. I sat up, confused. What does that even mean, God? I whispered. I waited. Nothing. I shook my head and tried to dismiss it. Maybe my brain was just tired. Maybe I was reading into things. But all day, that sentence followed me like a shadow. Go where the light is. That evening, while scrolling through my email, I saw a message I almost ignored. It wasn't from a company. It wasn't a job offer. It was from the church down the street, the one I used to attend before everything fell apart. Volunteers needed for community outreach this Saturday. Normally, I would have deleted it, but that whisper in my head nudged me. Like, go where the light is. Against all logic, I clicked, sign up. That Saturday, I walked into the church hall with zero expectations. Maybe I'd just pack canned goods. Maybe I'd mop a floor. Maybe I'd just blend into the background. But something unexpected happened. As I helped sort groceries, the outreach coordinator, a woman named Clara, kept glancing at me. Finally, she approached. Daniel, right? Yeah, I said, surprised she remembered me. She smiled warmly. I'm glad you came. We've actually been praying for more hands. God really sent you today. I blinked. Me? I'm not sure God's been sending me anywhere lately. She tilted her head gently. Oh, he has. Even silence is a direction, you know? There it was again. The same idea the old man had told me. The same idea I'd been fighting. I swallowed, unable to respond. As the day went on, something even stranger occurred. A man in a white polo, mid-40s, kind face, approached me while I was packing food bags. You said your name's Daniel? Yes, sir. He extended his hand. I'm Andrew. I run a small consultancy firm. We're actually looking for someone to help with logistics and operations. My heart skipped. Oh, that's exactly what I used to do. He raised his eyebrows with genuine interest. Really? Would you mind sending me your resume? We've been short-staffed for over a month. I almost dropped the stack of canned beans in my hands. Why, yes, sir. Absolutely. He smiled. Good. Let's talk Monday. He walked away, leaving me frozen in place. My eyes stung, but this time not from grief. I whispered under my breath, God, was this you? All along. It felt like something warm pressed into my chest. A peace I couldn't explain. But that wasn't the breakthrough moment. Not yet. That moment came later. Monday morning, my hands were literally shaking as I walked into Andrew's office. My resume printed, my shirt ironed, my heart pounding. We sat down for the interview. He asked about my experience, my past job, my habits, my strengths. But then, he asked the one question I wasn't prepared for. What kept you going these past few months? I froze. My mind flashed through the dark moments, the nights I cried, the silence that tormented me. And then I heard myself say softly, God, even when I thought he was quiet. Andrew leaned back, smiling. Faith gets tested hardest in silence. Those who endure it become leaders. My throat tightened. He glanced at my paperwork, then looked back at me with a calm sincerity. Daniel, I don't need to interview anyone else. The job is yours. I blinked. My breath hitched. Tears welled in my eyes faster than I could hide them. Are you sure? He nodded with a warmth that felt almost fatherly. God sends people at the right time. You're one of them. I exhaled shakily, my voice barely above a whisper. Thank you. But as I walked out of that office, overwhelmed and emotional, something deeper hit me. God had been speaking the whole time. In the silence, in the waiting, in the delay, in the emptiness, in the whisper, in the people around me, in the ache, in the growth. He never stopped hearing me. I just needed the valley to learn how to listen. I wish I could tell you that life became perfect after that, that every prayer was instantly answered, every door swung open, every fear vanished. Didn't. Life still had challenges. Bills still came. Unexpected problems still appeared. But something in me was different. The silence that once felt like abandonment now felt like presence. I remember walking home from the new job on my first week. The sky was a warm shade of orange, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't rush. I just walked, and I prayed. Not desperately, not angrily, not fearfully, but gratefully. Lord, I see it now. You weren't ignoring me. You were guiding me. You were preparing me. You were teaching me to hear you even when you whispered. I paused on the sidewalk, staring at the streaks of light across the sky. I thought you were silent, but you were speaking the loudest in the stillness. The old man's words echoed in my mind. Seeds grow in the dark. I smiled to myself, feeling the truth of it settle deep in my chest. All those months I felt buried? I wasn't buried. I was planted. Every unanswered prayer was a root growing deeper. Every delay was soil forming around me. Every closed door was protection. Every long silence was God waiting for the exact moment to break through. And when he did, it wasn't with a whisper. It was with a door so wide open I couldn't miss it. If you're listening to my story right now, maybe you're in that silent season. Maybe you've been asking God why the heavens feel closed. Maybe you've cried into your pillow, exhausted, whispering, God, do you even hear me? Let me tell you what I learned. Not from books, not from sermons, but from the valley that almost swallowed me. God's silence is never his absence. He hears every tear, every whisper, every question you're afraid to say out loud. And when he seems quiet, he's working in ways you can't see yet. You're not forgotten. You're not ignored. You're not invisible. You're being shaped, strengthened, protected, prepared. In the dark, in the waiting, in the quiet, you're growing. And one day, maybe sooner than you think, you'll look back and say exactly what I did. God was listening the whole time. If the story touched your heart today, please like this video, subscribe for more faith-filled stories, and share this with someone who feels like God is silent right now. And if you're in a difficult season, comment below, backhand index pointing right, God still hears me. I'll pray for you personally. You are not alone.
You always think you'll recognize the moment your life breaks. You imagine it will be loud, dramatic, a fight, a betrayal, a terrible goodbye. But mine? Mine was quiet. Almost gentle. It happened on an ordinary Tuesday night. I remember standing at the bus stop, holding a cheap plastic folder with my termination paper inside. The city lights were blurry from the rain, which kept dripping from my hair into my eyes. Every step felt heavy, like the world was pushing me down. I took a deep breath. "Beth," I whispered, "don't fall apart. Not here. Not now." But something inside me had already shattered. I walked home slowly, listening to the rain hitting the pavement, thinking it matched the sound of my heart breaking. When I reached my apartment, I didn't turn on the light. I didn't take off my coat. I just stood in the doorway, soaked, exhausted, empty. "Why, Lord?" My voice came out fragile, barely a whisper. "I try. I really try. But why does it always end like this?" The room was silent. Even the rain outside seemed to pause. Then, out of nowhere, I felt it. A soft warmth pressing into my chest. Not painful. Not frightening. Just there. Like someone was reaching for me from the inside. I froze. "No, no, that can't be you," I whispered. "Not now. Not when I felt so unworthy." But that warmth stayed. Gentle. Steady. Unmoving. And in that moment, for the first time in a long time, I felt something I thought I had lost forever. Hope. Just a flicker. Just a spark. But I felt it. And I knew I couldn't ignore it. Not anymore. The next morning tasted like defeat. I sat at my small kitchen table, staring at an empty bowl because I couldn't afford cereal anymore. My stomach growled, but I ignored it. My phone buzzed with a message from my mom. "Come home if you need to. I'm here." Simple words. Kind words. But they felt heavy. Because going home meant admitting I had failed. Again. Instead, I opened my laptop and stared at the job portal. Every listing looked like a reminder of everything I wasn't qualified for. Everything I had messed up. Everything I feared. I closed the laptop gently, not because I wanted to, but because I couldn't keep pretending. Later that afternoon, I found myself walking toward the chapel near my apartment. I didn't plan to go. My feet just led me there. The chapel door creaked as I pushed it open. The air inside smelled like wood, incense, and something ancient, something sacred. And there he was. The statue of Jesus with his heart exposed, surrounded by rays of gold and red. I stood there, staring at it. "Jesus." My voice trembled. "I know I don't belong here. I know I'm a mess. But something in me keeps pulling me back." I took a step closer. Then another. "I don't even know if you're calling me, or if it's just my imagination." But when I placed my hand over my chest, that same warmth returned. Stronger this time. Clearer. And I knew. Someone was calling me. Someone who still believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. I sank into the pew. And for the first time in months, I let myself cry openly. Not the pretty tears you wipe away quickly. The heavy kind. The ugly kind. I cried until my body shook. I cried until my heart felt raw. And when I finally stopped, the silence in the chapel wasn't empty. It felt like a waiting place. Like someone was sitting beside me. Listening. Not judging. Just listening. That was the moment I knew. I wasn't alone. If hope is a spark, darkness is the wind that tries to put it out. And darkness came for me. Harder than ever. The days that followed were brutal. No job replies. No money coming in. My anxiety grew claws, ripping into any small joy I tried to hold on to. One afternoon, as I walked to the grocery store, I'd bumped into someone from my past, Carla. She used to be a friend. Or maybe I only thought she was. Her eyes widened when she saw me. Beth? Wow. You look different. Different. She meant tired. She meant worn out. She meant broken. I'm okay, I replied, trying to smile. She tilted her head. I heard you lost your job. That's awful. But maybe it's time to. I don't know, lower your expectations? Her words pierced deeper than she knew. Or maybe she did know. I walked away quickly, keeping my face steady. But the moment I reached my apartment, I shut the door and slid to the floor. Her voice. Her judgment. It echoed inside me, feeding the lies already living there. You're worthless. You bring trouble wherever you go. You fail at everything you touch. I curled up, gripping my knees, shaking. Jesus, where are you now? I whispered. Why does everything hurt so much? Silence. Then. So faint I almost missed it. A gentle throb in my chest. Right over my heart. Weak. But still there. I pressed my hand against it. Don't leave me, I begged in a whisper. Please. The warmth grew stronger. Like a heartbeat that wasn't mine. And deep inside my soul, I felt. Not words. But presence. Comforting. Patient. Unmoving. But still. The darkness fought back. And I realized. This wasn't a battle outside me. This was a battle inside me. For my identity. My worth. My hope. And I had to choose which voice to believe. The breaking point came on a cold Thursday night. I opened my fridge and found nothing but half a bottle of water and a pack of expired noodles. I laughed. But it wasn't happy. It was hollow. This is it, I whispered. This is where hope ends. I grabbed my coat and walked into the night. I wasn't trying to run away. I just needed air. Space. Anything but the suffocating weight on my chest. Before I realized it, I was standing in front of the chapel again. The door felt heavier this time, but I pushed it open anyway. The room glowed softly with candlelight. I walked straight to the front. To him. The statue of Jesus looked different tonight. Or maybe I was different. I stopped right in front of him and whispered. Why me? Why are you calling me? I'm not strong. I'm not holy. I'm not enough. My voice cracked as tears fell. Jesus, what do you want from me? And then something inside me broke. But not in the painful way. This time. It broke open. My knees gave out, and I sank to the floor. My palms pressed against the cold marble. My forehead touched the ground. I surrender, I whispered, choking on my breath. I can't do this alone anymore. Take what's left of me. If you're calling me. I'm here. I'm listening. And then. In the silence of that chapel. Something supernatural happened. A warmth rushed through my body. Not like before. Not a flicker. Not a spark. A flood. A tidal wave of peace. Of love. Of something holy. It wrapped around me like an embrace. A real, living embrace. My sobs stopped. My shaking stilled. My breathing slowed. In the quiet of my heart, I heard it. You are mine. I gasped. Tears streamed down my face. My chest felt like it was glowing from the inside out. Jesus didn't just call me. He claimed me. And that night, everything changed. The next morning felt new. Not because my problems were gone. But because I wasn't carrying them alone anymore. I made breakfast with a soft smile I didn't plan. I opened my laptop without fear. I even whispered a small prayer. Walk with me, please. Around noon, an email notification popped up. Subject, interview invitation. I blinked. I reread it. Then reread it again. A job I barely remembered applying for. Wanted to meet me. Jesus, is this from you? I whispered. A warm pulse answered in my chest. During the interview, I wasn't perfect. I stuttered once. Lost my train of thought twice. But I was confident. Grounded. Held. And when the hiring manager smiled and said, "We'd like to offer you the position," I felt tears filling my eyes. But this time, they weren't tears of fear. They were tears of redemption. That evening, I went back to the chapel. Not to beg for help. Not to cry in desperation. But to say thank you. I sat in the front pew, closed my eyes, and whispered. You found me. You called me. And you didn't give up. Even when I did. I pressed a hand to my chest. The warmth was there. Strong. Alive. And I understood. The heart of Jesus wasn't just calling me anymore. It was living in me. Sometimes I look back at the girl I used to be. Broken, ashamed, hopeless. And I want to hold her. I want to tell her what I know now. Jesus doesn't wait for the moment you become worthy. He meets you in the moment you feel worthless. He doesn't call the strongest. He calls the surrendered. He doesn't search for perfection. He searches for openness. And when everything in your life falls apart, when you feel forgotten, abandoned, unloved, that's when his heart whispers the loudest. Come to me. I have been waiting for you. I didn't earn his hope. I didn't deserve his love. But he gave it anyway. And now? Now I know. Divine hope doesn't rescue you from your story. It restores you within it. If my story reached something inside you, if even for a moment you felt warmth in your own chest, or a pull toward something greater, that wasn't my voice. That was his. Jesus is calling you. Gently. Patiently. Lovingly. Right where you are. You don't have to be fixed first. You don't have to be holy. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to be willing. So if you felt something tonight, whisper a simple prayer. I'm here. I'm listening. Lead me. And if you want more stories of faith, healing, and divine hope, if you want more reminders that you are not alone, like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Not for numbers. Not for popularity. But because someone out there needs this hope just as much as you did. This is Beth. And the heart of Jesus is calling you. Let him in.